Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Freeman Files. This is another series in the J-Free 906 YouTube channel. And tonight we are going to be digging back into the lost treasures of North America. And we've got a couple of wonderful guests. These folks were featured on Beyond Oak Island. And they were in the Poverty Island episodes. A couple of them, actually, they were featured in the third one. But they were also in the second. And I've got a little video that I wanted to play here for us first tonight, and then we're going to jump into it. And I wanted to also let the folks know that are watching over on Rumble that I have Rumble up. So if you have any questions or comments or whatever you'd like to talk about or bring up during the show tonight, go ahead. I'm watching the live chat, so I can see those over there as well. I can't bring them up on screen, but all right. So I have this little video I want to show you first. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight. And also, if you haven't already, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel. And if you want to hear about new videos that we have coming out, just click on that notification bell and you'll know right away when it's working properly. You'll know when we have new content available. So tonight we're going to be talking with Jess and Mike Groleau and also Todd. And Todd, I have to apologize. I know you're in the green room. I've forgotten your last name. So we'll cover that when we bring you up on screen. I did make this little video on a trip that I did up to Escanaba, and I met with Mike and Jess, and they took me out in the boat. We did a little searching with the sonar, and we also did a little searching in the plane above Poverty Island and all of those. So that was really Todd Berg. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Linda reminded me. So I want to show you this little video real quick that I put together. Hopefully the sound will work all right. And you can see a little bit about what we're going to be discussing tonight. So let's play that and then we'll go next. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a little bit of some of what we were able to do when we were up there. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up our guest, Mike and Jess Groleau, along with Todd Berg. How you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Well,
I'm doing fantastic. I've been waiting for this one because, and I really wanted to thank you both for inviting me to come up and join you. And the gratitude I have of you got me in the boat, took me out, and we did some work there, and then in the plane. I did not expect all of that. But it was so cool. I really appreciate that so very much. And for those of the folks that are not completely familiar with maybe not even the show Beyond Oak Island, but also, what your involvement was with Poverty Island. I'd like to go ahead and, if you would, just kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown on that. It was season 3, episode number 6, called The Return to Poverty Island. And that was featuring you all. And you guys were in the second one too, but not on camera, right?
No, we just did the follow boat. So like we drove not we, I was just supervisor of the boat. Mm-hmm. But like the driving the camera crew to chase the other boat around.
Mm-hmm. And so then in the third episode, I guess, and Rick Lagina, you guys both, obviously, he's very familiar with your family. And so I guess, so that's when he went back, or when they went back with Maddie Blake, the show was centered around you two. And Todd, you were involved in that one too, right? Were you in the second one or the third show?
In the third show, yes. Okay. Technical support.
All right. So how did that all come about? I mean, did Rick reach out to you, or how did that come about?
No, it started on the second show when they dove a spot and there was really nothing down there. And we kind of had an idea that there was something on the other side of the island. And I recommended that, hey, why don't you guys go over there and see what you can find? And it's because it's all pre-planned. What they're going to do each day. They didn't have time to go over there. So I got a call the next spring and asked if we wanted to help out again. And we said, sure. And then he asked, well, what would you do if you were looking for it? And I explained what I would do to him. And he's like, you know what, that's a great idea. I like your take on it. How would you like to be the local knowledge on the show? And I said, awesome. Sure, if you think we're your guy, we'll do that, so that's where it kind of took off. So
So now, as far as I have understood, Jess, you are kind of like the researcher in all of this. You collect all the data, and Todd is the electronics man. He comes with all the fancy gear. Is that how that works?
Yeah, Todd's our nerd. We call him our team nerd, or my kids call him Uncle Nerd.
Uncle Nerd. That's awesome. And what were you holding up there? Go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
No, just lovingly.
This is just like my journal.
Oh my gosh.
This is just like when we go out on the boat. I always wrote like how the weather was that day, or if we found, just so I had like hand notes too.
Right.
Or like you can hear things I found. And
that are in there.
Coins.
Or maybe some silver from places that metal detect with me. And Leo will go metal detect other places. Little Leo.
Yeah, there's a picture of her actually, and I'm going to show these here real quick while I have them up. Whoops, that's the wrong one. It'd be this one here. There we go. This is when Maddie and the team was out there, and you guys had your opportunity to sit in front of the cameras. I mean, and you held all the camera people out. You've told me a few stories about some of these, but that was had to be an awesome experience to have them come out and go through all that with you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. When I fell off the boat and was hanging from my shorts, dangling, or when I fell into the boat in front of everybody and I was bleeding.
And they didn't put any of that on camera. I don't understand why.
We're still waiting for like a blooper reel.
That would have been great. That's good stuff right there. Yeah, the blooper reel for sure. So on this episode here, now, is this something that, Jess, that you've been interested in for a long, long time? Have you always been interested in looking into the shipwrecks around the Great Lakes?
Yeah, I've always so when Rick, because Rick, we got on the show, like involved with the show because of because of Rick, but he would come over for orders with the laser, and then I didn't know who he was at first, so he called me and he was like, "Oh, I'm Rick Lagina, and I have some stuff to laser," and I'm like, I'm out at lunch. Can I call you back? I mean, I wasn't mean, but I'm like, I'll call you back. He's like, oh yeah, sure. So I called him back from lunch, and he needed some stuff, and I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And then he sends me the image, and I'm like, yeah, no problem, I can do that. Well, then I remember it was funny. I was making mac and cheese for my kids, and all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, holy beep. I think that's the show my husband and my father-in-law like. And I'm like looking, and then I'm like, oh my God. So I called my husband, and he was like, you don't know. I'm like, no, look at the email. And he was like, he's like, you tell him you can do it. I'm like, I told him
you're gonna do it. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I told him he had to deliver all the stuff. He was like, you call him back and tell him we'll drive to Iron or wherever he's at and go pick it up. I'm like, oh no, I told him he's gonna come tomorrow and drive here. He's like, you call him back right now and we'll go there.
I didn't believe her at first. I'm like, oh, that just sounds like a scam. You know what I mean? Like, who does that?
Right.
So I called him back, and I was like, oh, my husband wants to take me out for lunch. We're going up there anyway. And he was like, oh, I don't want to inconvenience you, but if you could do that, like, he's just so sweet. So we went up there. Well, then it was, I think that was during COVID time too, right? So we had to do like all these Zoom calls still.
Yeah.
And like he's on the phone with me, and you could hear him. I think it was his sisters in the background. He was like, I've got to do a Zoomer or something like that. And she's in the back going, it's the Zoom call, Rick. He was like, whatever. He called it a Zoomer. Yeah.
That's funny. So that's pretty interesting. And you didn't even really realize who he was. That's kind of funny, because most of us, if we got a call from Rick Lagina, first of all, I'd be like, okay, this is a scam. Unless I heard his voice. I think I'd recognize his voice on the phone. But yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's what Coach said. The old I'm Rick scam. Yeah, for sure. Well, go ahead.
I was just saying, and then so when he came to pick up his stuff too, we had got our kids watching the show, and then Easton was like, Mom, does this mean you're famous now too? And I told Rick that Easton had said that, and Rick got all like, oh, you tell him I'm not famous. And I'm like, I think people stop you. I think you know what I mean? But yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, that man can hardly go anywhere nowadays. Everybody for sure knows who he is. And, we're getting ready for next week of season 12 to start next week. It's going to be a busy week for Tom and I and Linda, because we've got a lot to do preparing for 3 hours worth of Oak Island, the Curse of, we got a drilling down and then 2-hour premiere. So it's going to be a fun one. I wanted to talk briefly about this particular book that I've got, and this is called what's copied. It's called The Treasure Ships of the Great Lakes, and in this it talks about, and this is kind of where we're gonna talk about Poverty Island first, but I wanted to just mention a couple things from this, and it talks about in here there are over a 5-year period, approximately 10,000 ships were screened for this particular book. And they targeted out 210 possible treasure ships in this. And then also in here, it talks about it talks about Poverty Island and a $25 million treasure in that area. And so does that, and I got to go back to you and your research. It says arrow points to Poverty Island Shoal, where 5 treasure chests up to $25 million in gold were thrown overboard. And that's this showing a map right here and all of this. Is that still, do you believe that's still the same, is that the right story? Or I think,
in all my, I would say I'm probably up to thousands of hours of research now. The stories change. We could be here all week every night, but it always kangaroos.
If it's important, Linda, I'll put it up on the screen. Don't try to read all the chat. Yeah.
Sorry. Somehow it always ties back to Poverty Island. Somehow it seemed, but the story, how to get there's like all these branches.
You're right.
But
Well, I think you find with like a lot of these stories, especially as old as they are, is it started off as one thing and kind of evolved into the next story or a couple stories mixed together. But it always seems like somewhere, somehow, something got told and a lot of people believed it. It was a pretty big deal at the time. And you think that's why these stories start, and then they go on and on and on. And so they get a little muddled as they go on, but the more research Jess does, the more, it keeps pointing back to this area, and it kind of corroborates a lot of the eyewitness accounts and other things as well too. So.
Yep. Now you're a professional diver. I know you're a sheriff in the sheriff's department, correct?
Yep.
And so you go out and do a lot of dives that are not related to treasure hunting, but then you also do those for treasure hunting as well. So, I mean, Poverty Island, and I know the very first episode they went out there, they were looking in, they had Abbott Acoustics. I think they put down a scanner down below, and it went around and picked up some stuff down there. And then they found some what looked like a block or something down there, and I guess, but that was the wrong area. I am assuming so. Then the second episode, they still weren't quite on the right target. And then on the third episode, the one you guys were involved in, they actually had some pretty good hits. And you guys went down and you dove on, and take me back on this a little bit, because the Captain Lawrence was supposedly a ship that was looking for a shipwreck, correct?
Well, yes. And so that's another part of this, like where the stories branch out. One story says it was going to Beaver Island and it got wrecked. And then a lot of the stories was the Captain Lawrence was a treasure ship looking for, you know what I mean? And then it's a salvage ship.
Yep.
So it's all these different stories. And unfortunately, the captain is no longer alive. So you can't just ask him. But So you kind of just have to do all the research and just follow the trails.
Follow the trail, yeah. Now there was some scanning sonar that was used, and I'm going to bring these pictures up here real quick. Some different ones looking at, and this particular one, and I remember during the episode you were talking about. It looked like there was two ships, one laid over on top of the other. So it kind of talks about maybe one ship that may have found this other shipwreck, anchored out right there, and then it was sunk as well. So you got and you're looking at this, and this is the way it was described on the show. One ship laying this way, the other one going crossways. You got the two here, I guess. Is that so? Have we ever had an identification of either of those two ships at this point?
I think the big one is Erastus Corning.
Yeah, the big one, the long one pictured there is the Erastus Corning. We're 99% sure of it, but of course there's nothing obviously left of them because they're so shallow that they're busted and beat to pieces. And we've actually on other dives several hundred yards from the wreck, we found pieces laying within the boulder that are clearly from that shipwreck. So and then we think that smaller piece that was over the top is possibly part of the Captain Lawrence. So,
okay.
The Erastus Corning was 200 some feet long, and that long one in the scan
Mhm.
So that would be the Erastus. That's the one that we think is the Erastus Corning. That's
Okay.
that.
The very long one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the long one that shows here sticking out
Mhm.
very long, and then the other ship was laying across it on the end of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's on the bow or
It's probably like on the. Well, it's probably about halfway down the ship because
oh, is it really?
Corning, yeah, actually extends further past that. If you look where they intersect, you can see it goes all the way to the
Oh.
blind spot of the side skin.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, the
That's
Erastus Corning was huge compared to like the Captain Lawrence was only 60, I believe 66 feet,
Mhm.
and the Erastus Corning was over 200. So
Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, that's why the big discrepancy in size is there for sure. That's really interesting. And that's
Yeah.
the ones that you saw then at that point. But you have some other information about this, don't you, Jess? About you and I were discussing when I was there, and then you brought it up just a little bit ago too, talking about Beaver Island, which is another island that's in the now that's considered Lake Michigan still. Yeah, and
Lake
so
Michigan. Don't
yep.
ask me directions because I'll get lost. All I know is it's in Lake Michigan, sort of near us.
So I guess from where Poverty Island is located, it's probably 12 miles to the east and probably 5 miles north of there. So a little bit northeast, closer to Charlevoix, Michigan.
Okay. All right. Here's a question from Kat up in Nova Scotia. So, what did the Corning carry? What was it carrying? Any idea what it was?
I think it was. Hang on. Don't quote me on it. I want to say it was like iron ore,
Mm-hmm.
but I can get back to you.
Okay.
Oh, someone carried lumber, too.
Might have been lumber. I know it was carrying a whole bunch.
So it wasn't a treasure ship, though.
No. It was like supplies or iron ore. Is that how you call it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Interesting. So, but now let's get back to the Beaver Island because you were talking and you sent me some pictures of some of your logbook there, your journal, referring to the king of Beaver Island. Tell us a little bit about this story here and how this relates to Poverty Island, in your opinion.
So I'll just take a huge story for the sake of the show, and I'll just like little bit.
All right.
So the Beaver Island King, or Jesse Strang, he was king of the Mormons,
Mm-hmm.
and he was actually the only king to ever be crowned in the United States. And he actually became such a problem for the United States government. The United States government assassinated him. And like this isn't like a conspiracy thing where just is being crazy. Like this is like actual facts in a book where like he was shot and killed. But he had a fleet of ships. He had 3. I think one was named, one was a dolphin. Like they were like weird names, like not weird, but kind of cute names like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they would go around to all the islands and they would plunder all the villages, like the fishing villages and all the islands.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a huge stash of gold. And a lot of the research I read kept referring to the Poverty Island gold. And so it might not be Civil War gold. It might be King James gold. But it always ends up going back to Poverty Island, and they believe he would hide it on these islands to hide from the government. So
if that were the case, then it would probably be on the island itself rather than in the water on a sunken ship, or
that
maybe
yeah,
one of his ships.
or not Poverty Island, or it could be like there's Big Summer, small.
So I think if you read a lot of the books on him and stuff, it kind of tells he was known to stash gold on all the islands in Lake Michigan, not put it all in one spot, and
a little bit.
So I mean that gives you all those islands over there. There's Little Summer, Big Summer, there's Gull Island, Snake Island, Summer Island Shoals. There's just a ton of places you could put stuff, and then Because of the location of Beaver Island, there's the Manitou Islands that are kind of over that way, and there's North Fox and South Fox Island as well. So,
so North Fox Island, also, not to like go off the thing, but there's also a gold story of North Fox Island, and from back when all the fires happened and like the big huge fires in Chicago. And like they had all the looting and stuff back in Chicago. And this was true. They found some of the gold and the stolen jewelry from that Chicago fire on North Fox Island.
Oh, wow.
And they also believe that there was Portuguese. I think it's Portuguese, but I don't quote me because I have a lot of like info in my head and I get jumbled, so I have to write it all down. But yeah. But so there's all these islands that have gold stories. And then even like Fayette that you showed a picture of, the ghost town.
Yeah.
That has a missing gold story called Jim Sumner's Bag of Gold.
Really? I got to get back to the UP because I need to go looking.
Well, in one of those books you dug up that I read, even said the Native Americans in the area, they were trading something that involved like Fairport or something, didn't it? And they said they would have to go and get copper. And they said it was a 1 to 2 day trip or something. And they were in canoes, right? At the time they canoed. So that kind of gives the impression it's, inner islands where they can seek shelter if something kicks up. But then they came back with a large quantity of copper to purchase. I don't know what it was. I can't remember now. But so, there's a lot of other stuff too that would be, valuable possibly in the area too, if they were never able to make it back out there and get the rest of their copper. So,
wow. There is so much history out here. It's amazing. And I was just going through this book a little bit, and I was reading some of the different stories. I mean, and I dug out the portion about just Lake Michigan because of that being around where your area is, and a lot of times these ships that sunk, so many of them in the Great Lakes, and the storms, because of storms, it gets very treacherous there out of nowhere, comes up out of nowhere. But it talks about, some of them, some of them, like the one you were talking about earlier, was an ore, carrying ore, some sort of materials rather than a gold ship. And then it talks about what was in its safe or its strong box that was on the ship, that being left over. And some of them talked about, many of them have, somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 worth of gold and coins and stuff like that. So, there's a good for any coins traded in the area near the island. Traded around like
I guess I don't know the context of that. What they mean by
you mean like Alex, if you from the ships in question. Oh, so anybody find any coinage that might have been old that have popped up in the area?
So not any stories I've heard of or in any documentation, but John Smith, who was on the show with us, what did he find? He found, was it a coin or something?
It wasn't. No, it was a button of a Civil War uniform
Of St. Martin, I think it was, or was it Poverty?
It was one of those islands.
Yeah, one of the islands up there.
So it wasn't a coin. It was a Civil War uniform button off of one of the islands, and it was he had it certified.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
It wasn't like, oh look at I got like the Civil War button. Like it was like legit. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yep. So Todd, you're sitting back there kind of quiet, but tell us a little bit about.
Because I keep talking.
He's piped up a few times to say something, and then the subject changed. So
yeah, I know, right? So I don't want to leave you out on this because I know that being the nerd and the tech guy. I mean, what kind of electronics or what kind of devices do you bring to the table searching for this, searching for shipwrecks and all of that?
Well,
tell them what you're working on.
We have a magnetometer at our disposal, built that from scratch. It's called a proton precession magnetometer.
Oh wow.
It detects ferrous objects only. or actually anything that'll disturb the magnetic field of the Earth. And they're expensive, so I don't have a lot of money, so I built my own.
Nice.
It works surprisingly well.
Yeah.
In fact, we were originally going to use that on the episode of Beyond Oak Island, but decided that it wouldn't be very effective. I mean, if you're looking for, non-ferrous materials of value, it's not going to be helpful. So decided not to go with that, but went with sonar instead. And found that to be very useful.
Yeah, for sure. You guys have a lot of really cool scans. Now, is the ones from the show or are those from your equipment, or was that? Yeah,
that's Todd's. Yeah,
that's perfect.
Yeah, that came out of Garmin. I forget the exact model of the unit, but unfortunately, Garmin did not provide a good way to get the images out of the unit. Oh. They initially had a computer program where you could do that, and they stopped distributing it. Like, we couldn't find it on their website, any of their groups. So I went into the Wayback Machine, archive.org. I found a copy of it, downloaded it, and realized why they don't support it anymore, because it's terrible.
Oh.
Five times out of 6 times, it'll crash. And when it doesn't crash, the images are horrible. So took some time, but I figured out how to reverse engineer their file formats. And the customer is not meant to see that resolution of image from the unit.
Oh.
So it was actually the image that you were showing that was kind of black and white was a higher resolution than what you see on the unit, or you can download off the cards. So
exactly.
Wow. That's great stuff. I mean, and this is a must-have tool. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're going to be searching, underwater, and what's the range on this thing as far as water depth?
Well, 300 feet or 328, I guess, 100 meters, but you'll lose resolution because it's pretty much a fixed swath that you're scanning. So like these images, it's difficult to tell what the scale is. That's spanning from maybe 30 to 60 feet of water, maybe.
Yeah, and probably 100, 150 feet out on each side.
Yeah. But you're right, and it's definitely helpful, and it helped us find a few other things that I think you're going to get to, but very, very helpful. And I think it was the weekend after the episode was shot, purchased a drone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and that's been helpful also. So it kind of modifies the way that you go through this, the search procedure. It's research, and then charts, hopefully, and then side scan, document what you can. If you find something interesting, sometimes not right away, you can take the images home, go through them carefully with the fine-tooth comb when you're not rocking and rolling. And then if you find something interesting, go to that latitude and longitude, drop the drone, get some good videos, see what's in the neighborhood, and if it's interesting enough, then you can dive.
Okay, so you're talking about a water drone. Okay, at first I was thinking about a water drone.
Not a one-time use submersible air drone.
Yeah, whoop. Okay, it's done.
So I think the really unique thing that Todd kind of came up with too, which will help us when we get it further into documenting the wrecks, is he. I don't know. You can explain it, Todd. The underwater positioning thing that you did.
Yep.
So you can put basically a beacon on the diver, or a beacon on the drone, and then one on the boat, and then he can kind of explain it there. So.
Yeah, there's one major drawback to the underwater drone is once it gets 10 feet down or 10 feet away, you can't see it anymore from the surface.
Right. Yep.
And it's very easy to get lost. I couldn't tell you how many times I thought I was going forward and I came up on my anchor line.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, it was actually behind us. So,
yeah, I can see the disorientation. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. It's not like an air drone where you look up and there it is. So, came up with a way to position or detect the position of a little transponder you put on the drone itself. And it'll come up on a chart and it'll plot it. You can set waypoints and say, I want to go there. And you just pilot right to it.
And I think we got measurements off it on a couple things that were pretty accurate, so really gives a good log of what's going on down there, and almost like a GPS underwater.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Yeah, because there's some, and it's got to be the hardest thing to do, I would think, is to be able to identify, finding a shipwreck is one thing, and then trying to identify what ship it is, especially if it's old. It's got to be painstaking. And some of that water, as you mentioned earlier, Mike, you were talking about, if it's on the shoals or in the shallower waters. And that's why I pointed out that in that little video I showed, you could see those rock shelves that are not that deep in the water. And if a ship gets hung up on that, the winter weather and the waves and everything else are going to rip that thing apart in no time. So you're not going to have much to be able to identify with.
And I think, like you said, if one of those photos you had was a picture of like a log up on shore, wedged in between the rocks, and that's actually a piece of a shipwreck.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
In it. But I mean, it just shows how violent it can get, even in you would think that's the leeward side of the island, right? Where, it would be the calmest, even in a storm, because it's protected by the shoals. And, that was 15, 20 feet up the rock bluff, wedged in between rocks. So.
Yep. Yeah. Now, somebody had asked a question. I think they were talking about, what are the laws like up there? When you come to, where you think there's something going on, you can't just jump out there with your metal detector just anywhere you want. I don't assume so anyway.
Well, yeah, you can dive whatever you want. You can't molest or disturb it. So, and that goes for like the Great Lakes, stuff like that. But you're dealing with federal law and state law being on the Great Lakes, because the feds consider it a federal body of water because it connects to the ocean.
Okay.
So you're dealing with two sets of laws. So you're really limited on what you can do, and it's kind of a painstaking process to go and get permits and permission to be able to, move stuff, lift stuff, hand dredge it out, just get it out of the muck, to be able to do stuff like that. So.
Yeah, that's got to be the frustrating part. So if you really do find something very interesting, is there a permit process you have to go through to be able to, go, or do you just have to turn it over to someone else and say, okay, here you go, we just found this?
So you can, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of part of the deal is you want to give them information, but you don't want to give them too much information so they can go look at themselves and be like, well, the state's going to claim this,
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you're going to document it very well. You're going to write reports on it, pictures, measurements. You're going to approach the state underwater archaeologists with what you've got, tell them what you think it is, and then start seeking permits from there. So,
wow,
and then it becomes kind of a joint thing, at that point. So,
right, probably a lot easier to do when you have a TV show crew with you. They can take care of some of that stuff, you would think. But again, you guys were just looking. You weren't really touching or doing anything. You were still in the investigation portion at that point. So
we get a lot of tips from Rick, actually. Rick, will tell us, do this. Oh, no, don't. You know what I mean? So it's we actually get a lot of, or Rick will call me and be like, do you need anything? What do you want me to do? Just let us know. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome having him in your, on speed dial. You can, because they've been through this for several years now. So I mean, kind of has a clue. And I know Michigan, for metal detecting, like up in the UP, there's only one area that's open for just open metal detecting, and that's in Brimley on the beach. And it's only about, a few hundred yards of beach that you get to metal detect on, where you don't need a permit. Otherwise, you're not allowed. So it's like, I don't understand that, because I would think that, it should be open, for people to be. I mean, you go down to Florida, you can metal detect on the beaches, and whatever you find on the beach is yours. If you find it in the water, now that becomes a little different issue. But if it's on the beach, it's yours. And a lot of people find some amazing things. So why is Michigan, with all the beaches they have, hundreds of miles of beach. Why are they so stringent on it? I just don't get that. But anyway. So what's next? I mean, are you still working on the Poverty Island story, or
It's
are you off onto other adventures now?
not just Poverty Island. I would say it's kind of because of all the stuff I've found, like with like all the other stories, like the Beaver Island King. He's probably like my most thing I've been researching because there's so much about him, and it's really fascinating, like how he gave up like such a big headache to the government that they were like, nope, done. Like he had 3 ships, and he was so good at what he did, and he was such a problem, and he was all over, like, and I think he had a seat for a while, and was it the Senate?
Yeah, the state House of Representatives.
Yeah,
or
something like that.
Something downstate, and he was a problem down there too. So,
Wow.
Yeah,
trying to throw his weight around essentially, and that's where he really started getting a lot of attention because he was trying to declare, basically saying that's his own nation, Beaver Island. And
another fun fact about him. So the guy that this Jesse Strang learned all of this from was obsessed with Captain Kidd and like all these treasure stories. So, and then they would go to all these treasure hunting spots, and I'm like, well, it's kind of crazy that. So it kind of all, I don't know. It's really cool. Like I have all these notes, like I'm like they're all like tied in. It's like a big web.
Yep. And that's got to be hard to go through. I mean,
especially in my head, like ask him. He's like, I don't even know what you're saying right now.
Well, you got to listen to the whole story to kind of put it in order. It's not linear, it's like end, middle, beginning, end again. So it's kind of funny.
He understands me like 98% of the time, and then but like he'll have to like interpret for other people because they're like, is she okay? and he's like, just let her get to the point, she'll get there. But
yeah. Wow.
Like
well, there's so much. I mean, I don't know honestly how you do it
up here. I just don't know how to get it out.
But there's so much information. I mean, know. Really,
that's why I write it down, and hopefully someday somebody can be like, oh my God, this woman was a genius.
You got to write a book. Put all that together into a book for everyone. I think that's the key right there. That's what you need to do. I'm scrolling through some pictures here because I wanted to bring up, you had this one area, and it's Poverty Island, but you called it the cave.
Cave of Wonders.
Cave of Wonders.
Cave of Wonders. Yeah. There's some amazing. I'm going to bring these pictures up, and this is Poverty Island here.
Those are on the way to Poverty Island.
So essentially same kind of landmass structure. It's bedrock, but it's Burnt Bluff.
Okay.
South of Fayette and north of Fairport, which Fairport is north of Poverty Island.
Tell me about the things inside.
So there is actually some like writings or some scribings on the wall. There's also a lot of modern graffiti in there too, unfortunately. But they think the Native Americans, and they did have a presence in that area, obviously. But I think Native Americans are responsible for that. So
wow.
So a lot of caves there.
Yeah, I'd be all about. I mean, and so. Are these places where, I mean, the one of the pictures you were showing, there's people on the beach and climbing up or, preparing to climb up there. So these are open to the public? You don't need to...
No, it depends on where it is. If you go far enough north, it kind of runs into some state park property, and you could, but a lot of that is private property along there.
Okay.
So you could go essentially to the high water mark, and explore, but then after that you'd be trespassing. So.
Okay. Yeah, because I would be all about going inside some of these. I would have to.
That's Poverty Island. That's the Cave of Wonders. That's what I named it so I can remember it. Like how, yeah.
Wow. And that which side of the island is that on the? Is that on the lighthouse side or?
Yeah, the southwest side of the island.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yep. Wow. These pictures are amazing of all the stuff.
Those are the ones you took on your drone, right?
Yep. Some of those are.
Some of them are the ones that Todd took on the underwater drone. Like, look at that. Like, what is that? Like that. I call that the boomerang because
it looks like a boomerang.
Yeah, it's actually a rib on the ship. You know, you can
wow.
see the square, and then it goes vertical. So,
you're so smart.
Wow. And you've got some things pointed out here. Looks like a cable or something over there. Hard to believe what this is. This is all around that shipwreck there at Poverty Island.
Mm-hmm.
You got this one pointed out. It looks like writing or something on the. Huh.
Yeah, doesn't that? So we didn't know. Like, doesn't that look like writing or something?
It does. It looks like writing. Wow. I don't know. That's interesting. But these are all pictures just right around Poverty Island. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But again, trying to make an identification. You know, is this the one where the one ship is laying on the other, or is that a different place? Okay, all right.
This is a little bit.
Nobody has identified this particular wreck.
I don't think
nobody's been able to definitively confirm it. I mean, it's a good candidate for the Erastus Corning,
right?
Because that one hadn't been found, and it was supposed to be in that area,
right?
And it fits the profile.
Yes.
But without something like an anchor or markings on the ship, something or something. Look back at photos and be like, oh, that's it. It matches.
Right.
You can't definitively identify it. So
wow. Pretty amazing stuff. I tell you, I know if without you guys both have to work and you're part of the sheriff's department or involved that, so you probably don't get a whole lot of time to go out and search as much as you'd like to, I assume, right?
Not as much as we'd like to. Between work, kids, and family, it gets pretty busy, and then
weather.
You got weather to deal with, finding a good day for weather, and so we were really lucky. We were blessed when we had those 2 days there. We went out and it was dead calm. It is never like that over there. Even on calm, non-windy days, you'll get residual wave action from the big lake.
Right.
And, it was like glass. So
wow. Somebody asked a question because I remember one of the things at the end of the episode was a box. You saw a box, what looked like a box, and
we never got down into it yet. No.
So
it's on one of the. I don't know if you have that photo or not, but it was a bigger box, and of course we're not really able to go and actually examine that, because we'd have to disturb it, and we need permits for that. So
right. Well, I think it was like inside of a.
In between the libs of the. Yep.
No, not yet. Right, the yellow. Oh, they can't see me pointing at the screen. Oh my god! It's right there. It's right there.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. We were able to actually go back and dive that one probably a week after we filmed the show.
Okay.
And we got better light in there. Got a camera further in there, and what it looked like was big, like almost it looked like granite is what it looked like to me, but it was like shaped. It was hand tooled and cut, so it wasn't a chest, unfortunately, but
it was a cut stone of some sort.
Cut stone of some sort. So
it was inside. It was inside of
or ballast or what it was.
Yeah. I forget where it was exactly, but it was inside, or inside. It was like in here or something. It was like inside.
Those like yellow photos.
Right. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, it's another challenge is the amount of silt
and zebra mussels.
Yeah, and zebra mussels.
Yeah. There's some of the pictures that you had that were. It almost looked like a coin laying on the ground. There was so much of the mussel shells that were down there that you couldn't really if there was coins laying there, silver coins, you wouldn't even know because they're mixed in with everything else.
No, the only good thing about like precious metals is the zebra mussels don't seem to like those. They don't attach to them. The algae doesn't grow on it, which is why they coat like the bottom of sailboats with copper paint a lot of times. So,
wow. So what's next for the Groleaus and Mr. Berg? What do you got on your agenda next?
Winter.
Well, yes, of course, winter. But I mean, that's the time for research, and then spring comes. You got to get out there, right? So, what's? I mean, do you have a particular plan set for next year already, or?
I think so. Todd purchased a bigger boat recently, so he's kind of getting that up and running and ready to go, and that'll give us a little bit extra capability. So, as far as us in the winter months, we're not going to be doing a whole lot, obviously.
I just read a lot.
A lot of research, yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Library of Congress, all that. So.
Oh, I have a friend now. Oh yeah, I forgot. So that sounded bad. So I made friends with. So I sent a random email to the Library of Congress, and now I have a friend there, and I send her on like quests. I'll be like, can you go look for this? So now I have an email person, and then Rick has been using her.
Ah, great.
And then I found, well, I better not, never mind. I can't say that part. I forgot. Never mind.
Okay. Well, that's what we were, one of the things that I know they did not continue with the Beyond Oak Island TV show that got canceled or whatever. And disappoint to a lot of people, including me, are very disappointed by that because I enjoyed it. And that's how I met you and Mike initially, was by doing, having you on the podcast after we had talked about those episodes. And so now, is there any, and I hate to ask this question because I know it might jump into a realm you can't talk about, but is there any idea that there might be something coming television wise with some of the research you're doing in the future? I know Beyond is probably not going to do anything, but I mean,
so we haven't had any indication from like Prometheus, which is the company that does the filming for Oak Island and Beyond Oak Island. But we're friends with like the producers and the camera crews and stuff, and we get contacted by them. Seems like once or twice a year when they're trying to pitch new show ideas. If we have any ideas or stuff like that. So it's kind of like always something just in the works, but nothing solid. So
right. Yeah, because we'd certainly like to see that. And if there's anything I can do to help, I mean, if you have some, stuff that you would like to get filmed or whatever, give me a call. I'll be happy to run back to the homeland and, and get some video for you or whatever we can do to put something together because I think it's important. And I also think it's very interesting of what you guys are doing. The information just simply about Poverty Island in itself is great. And then some of the other, there's a plane, you talked about a plane that you were looking for as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I actually just had a guy in our hangar here earlier this week. And we were talking about it again. She doesn't know about it, but it was Will Carn. He's another diver and had contacted a company that has a little bit more extensive tools for like side scan sonar and stuff like that to come look. And they came and looked and didn't find anything. But essentially what happened in the 70s, a plane was coming back, a small plane like a 182. It's coming back from Washington Island, kind of cruddy weather, ended up going down in the lake. And there was a lot of theories about what happened. Was there drug running involved? There was questionable acts by the people that were on the plane. Well, coincidentally, in the early 2000s, his laminated paper card for insurance floated up from the plane wreck, which is somewhere in Little Badenoch, and washed up on shore in Stonington with his name and everything on it. So it's down there. But that's something we kind of look for when we're out too, and side scanning. And
if it's too bad to go to Poverty Island, which
we'll pop around the bay here and look for different stuff. So there's always something to do or scan. And think you found something last summer, eh? But we weren't able to get anchored on it because it was too rough to be able to get to it. So
Was that
that's
close by, or where was that?
yeah, kind of just north of Escanaba a little bit, and that's something we're going to explore in the spring when we get some decent weather. So
Wow, that's great. Would love to get an update too when you do that and find out what's happening there. Well, I really envy you guys because you do get the opportunity to do these things, and you got the plane. So that's really, I mean, I know the day that you and I were up, Mike, and I thank you for taking me out. But the weather conditions, I mean, it was a nice day, but yet at the same time, you need the right sunlight conditions to be able to see deeper in the water, to be able to identify or see a shipwreck. Sometimes I've seen pictures, you can see them very clearly, especially when they're in the shallows. Obviously, it needs to be in the shallows. But the day we were out, we were flying over that one spot and couldn't really see anything down there. So, I mean, that has to be frustrating as well, because it's not cheap to get a plane out and fly over there and have a look at these things. So,
And on the boat too, how quick when we were out, it was calm, and then the next minute we had those huge.
yep.
So
Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason for the shipwrecks, I think, is because the weather conditions change so quickly on the Great Lakes. And you hear about all the ones that happen up in the Lake Superior, even the weather and the depth of that lake, and the weather conditions change so frequently and or so quickly, take, ships down, planes down, or whatever.
it's 2024, and sheriff department, they're going out and rescuing people still because of the weather, and they have all the instruments and tools to read the weather, and
still happens. Yeah. What was that, Todd?
That's a good point, because a lot of these shipwrecks, maybe 100, 200 years old, long before, GPS, long before LORAN, navigation was a problem. And a lot of them probably happened at night.
Yeah. Yep. And with those, and that's the unique, the makeup of the ground underneath the water. And again, I go back to that where I was showing the flying around Poverty Island and looking at that rock shelf that's out there quite a ways. And it's not that, I mean, you can go out quite a ways from the island and the water's not that deep, right? I mean, so a ship coming through there, if you are off just a little bit, you're going to run aground, and those rocks are just going to rip up your ship and you're going down quickly. So it's pretty treacherous going in between those islands, I would imagine.
we call it threading the needle on the way out there, because there's a couple spots where
a couple 100 feet on each side, essentially, where you got 30 feet of water, or 1 foot of water, or
wow.
There's a few other places where there's 60, 70 feet of water, and it comes up to 3 feet, in just a small area in the middle of the lake. So
how are the Great Lakes doing as far as their depth? I mean, I know there for a while they seem to be getting shallower. I think weren't they at some point? Or is that
they're still receding a little bit. The water's going down a little bit,
Right. So that
doesn't really affect us right now. But if you look 100, 150 years ago, what lake levels were, they could have been higher, or they could have been a lot lower than they are now too, which changes things, where things were safe, where they've been able to pass through. Now they can't, and they get hung up. So,
yep. Okay. Last question. And I know that over on the Lake Huron side of Lower Michigan, they have, they found Abbott Aquatic Acoustics. He found what looked like, they call it the Michigan Stonehenge down there, a circle of rock that one of them looked like it had a mammoth carved onto it. Have you seen anything really odd like that wasn't a shipwreck related, that you thought, oh my gosh, we got to dive on this at some point and see what it is?
Nothing that could be a natural formation, or is like, I think you're kind of referring to almost like an Atlantis thing, right? Where like an underwater city where it used to be out. I haven't seen anything like that, but I've heard a story from one of our divers about an underwater forest, kind of southeast of Escanaba, that he dove on one time. And I haven't been able to find it myself, but it sounds interesting. So, because that would imply the water was 30 feet lower than it is now, you know?
Right. And that's kind of where I was headed with that. You know, when I was asking you about things you've seen, when you talk about that, like Stonehenge, that circle of stone that looked like, apparently, it looked like there was carvings on a couple of them. If that is possible, or if that's true, and then that means the water level was so low that people were out there carving on these stones. So, or even placed them or put them in those places. So, and again, we go back, how many years can we go back and find out what the lake conditions were back, 1,000 years ago, or, whatever. Very interesting to find out, I guess. Have you done any research on stuff like that at all, Jess? Water depths of the Great Lakes over the years?
Not water depths, no. But in my book, I do write like weather conditions, waves. So like if my kids or their kids or someone like 200 years from now, maybe it'll be helpful to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to document that stuff. Absolutely. I really think you need to, at some point, put this together into a book. I mean, a published book for people, because I've seen the stack of stuff you have there and the things you found. I mean, it'd be interesting to read for sure. Yeah, something you should do.
I just need someone to help me get it from here, jumbled in my head, onto a paper where somebody can read it and be like, what is this person saying? Like, she's crazy.
No, that's what you need. Well, your daughter, you'll have to get your daughter up there and get her working on a computer, and then
she's my mini me. I'd have her do the drawings and they'd be like, oh my God, they're insane. She's eyeballing me right now in the corner.
She's giving you the eye. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
She's trying me a note.
I tell you what, she's wonderful. I was so lucky to get an opportunity to meet you guys and meet her as well, and your family. And again, thank you so much for taking me out in the boat and taking me up in the plane. And I can't wait when you find something of significance again.
You'll have to come again next summer, and
I'd love to,
so we can do it. We'll plan so we can. Hopefully, the weather will be more. So we can just take the boat out to Poverty Island.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Like on the boat instead of flying over.
Well, we got to take Todd with us because he's got to do some scanning as well.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fun. And then like go out on the island. It's cool. Like my kids love doing it. Even Leah and Easton and all them, they like snorkel. Like they have a blast. They snorkel and spend the day out there.
And I'd be looking for those petroglyphs.
Yeah.
I'd be looking for some of that too, because there's been a lot of stories going on in the past about, who may have been, discovered North America long before Christopher Columbus, and who might have been here. There's people talking about the Templars and how they may have come down to St. Lawrence Seaway, made their way through the Great Lakes, and then over into Wisconsin or wherever. So I'd always be looking for signs of that sort of thing, or some sort of people that were here from Europe or wherever, Portugal or wherever they may have been from, to come over to North America years and years and years ago. So I'm always looking for stuff like that. Yep, there you go. So you guys have been great, so interesting, and thanks so much for the presentation. Really do appreciate you guys so very much, Mike and Jess and Todd. And again, I'll be back next summer. We'll be back up there next summer so we can go and take a look. When's the we'll just leave that question for when we get up there.
What? When's the what?
Well, no, I was going to say, it's hard to say in the summertime because I know, when living in the UP, you go through different areas of like the black flies, and when's the best time of year to be out there as far as the water conditions?
Honestly,
probably end of July, early August.
Okay.
But if it were to snow in July or August, I'd be like, yeah, it's the UP. Like,
I know, right? That's exactly right. Yeah, I know the feeling because living there as many years as I have. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Just like it wouldn't be crazy for us to have like a super 75-degree day tomorrow and then snow the next day. Like it's crazy.
Yep. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I don't live in the UP now, is because of the cold winters. And I'm one of those snowbirds now. So January, February, I'm in Florida.
Good for you.
where it's a little bit warmer. So I shoveling snow is a thing of the past for me. So there you go.
We'll send some for you.
Yeah.
I can always come up. I still come up and go snowmobiling sometimes up there. So yeah, I love doing that. So I love going snowmobiling. Always wanted to go to the Keweenaw Peninsula snowmobiling. I've never been up there snowmobiling before. I've been up there, but not snowmobiling. So I always wanted to do that. So maybe one day we'll come and gather you guys up and we'll go.
Yeah, that'd be
I
fun.
love the Keweenaw. That's where I love all the rocks, right?
Yep, and the copper. Lots of copper.
I found copper.
Yeah.
Up there.
See, there you go. That's the most pure copper in all of the world was found in the Keweenaw Peninsula. And the
also, so fun fact too, the oldest rocks have been found up there. That have been dated. It's they always say, oh, the UP is God's country. But so far, the oldest rocks in the world are dated up in the Keweenaw. See, God's country.
Yep, I believe that. Absolutely do. So I love it up there. I absolutely do. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for being here with us today. Gosh, guys, I really, and I can't wait to get back up there next summer. We're going to have a look at this. But if anything comes up, any of your research, you come across anything, let us know right away. So we can get that out here and let everybody know about it, because that's all part of this lost treasure.
Leah drew a picture. She wants
is that your treasure map? So. Leah drew treasure map.
X marks the spot.
Well, there you go. That's it. All right. Thank you, Leah. We got to go find it now. Yeah. All right. Yep. All right. Thank you guys very much. And thank you, folks, for joining us here tonight. We really appreciate everyone that tuned in. And we will continue this story with more exciting lost treasures of North America coming up on the J Free 906 podcast. Good night, everyone.